Okay, top and bottom kit from YZ85. The bottom box here is the crank and everything. This is part of the top kit. Has the gaskets and all the seals for the cylinder.
This thing right here.
And that thing right there, the piston. Open that up. My helpers here today.
Hi. We have this, which is in a little bag. So
What do you think that is?
I believe it's one of these. I don't know. Don't ask me.
It's the piston pin or wrist pin.
Yeah.
Don't drop that.
I'm not trying to, Dad.
Alright, piston comes in a nice little cloth bag for protection.
It's a little bit caught up there.
It's kind of weird. Put it in the bag.
Now, in the box, there's this little thing.
Okay.
Don't lose these, cause
In
There you
this.
go. Yep.
there's
And instructions for those uninitiated.
who don't.
It's always good, even if you think you know what you're doing, to read over before assembly, because there's little things like right there, the holes in the piston. Okay, some pistons come with it, some without, and there's instructions in the thing on how to drill it if you need to drill it.
So if you want, you
okay,
can pause.
that's good. Yep.
Like pause the video and read it.
Yeah.
Instead of hold it up from the...
Oh, how do you?
Okay, the bottom end kit. My helper's going to open it up for me here. Right on top is all your gaskets and seals.
Right here, there's installation
Yep.
thing right here.
Open that up. And nicely packaged. You get some YZ85 stickers.
Oh,
If you decide to put them on your bike. There's the crank.
it's not with those. Let's just.
There's the crank. And there's your bearings.
Oh wow, this is heavy as hell.
Okay, so everything you need to do your complete assembly is
Also-
included.
There's this right here.
That's your ring for this piston. That actually is supposed to be in the other box. Alright, so we got our crank bearings here. They're the first thing we're going to put back in. These are press fit. I have a press, so they're going to go in real easy. But if you don't have a press, you can tap them in. Just if you're going to hit them, use a socket or something the size of the outer race. Don't hit the inner, because if you
We'll try
damage
not
the
to
bearing,
break
you're going to be doing this all again. Alright. Another method I've seen, I've never tried it myself, is to put the bearings in a freezer or dry ice and get them super cold, because you know metal will shrink when it gets cold, and then you heat up the case. I've seen guys do it with a propane torch, and other guys take the whole case and actually put it in the oven and heat the whole thing up. I've never done that. I've never had a need. Again, you can tap them in if you're careful. And just note there's two different sizes. Okay, the left side case uses a smaller bearing, and the right side case is a slightly larger. You can't mess it up because
And make sure you have the right size.
you'll know right away that is not the right bearing. Anyway, we're going to put those in, and I'll update you here in a few minutes. Alright, we're going to go ahead and press our bearings in here. I'm using a 12-ton shop press. I got a block of wood down here because I don't want to damage the backside of the aluminum against the steel plates. Just lay your bearing in dry. You don't need any lubrication. Okay, remember, lubrication takes up space. Make sure the bearing is in and just sitting there. Use a socket or something, a steel piece that's about the same diameter. And then just button it down. And of course, it helps if you've tightened it up all the way. Takes a second on these little guys. Go. And if you look at nice and close in, you'll see the bearings popping right into place. I like to go slow because you can't really feel when it bottoms out other than an increase of pressure, and you don't want to go too far. Right there, she's in. She bottomed out. And that's all it takes to push in a bearing. There she is, good and flush, nothing's damaged. Okay, got one half of the crank in, right side. The right side's a little tight when it goes through the bearing. I noticed that when I was knocking it out, so I just had to give it a little bit of help. Rubber mallet, tapping it. If you're going to tap it on the side where the connecting rod is, not the other side, because there's nothing really supporting the two races there. You can see here, it's hollow in behind. And again, when I say tap, I mean literally just tiny little taps with a rubber mallet to help it along. And it'll slide down eventually, and you'll feel it when it bottoms out. It rolls quite nicely now, no banging and clanging like the old one. Alright, so I'll get the other side put on. Okay, I got the right side crank in. Before we put the case back together, you got to make sure your transmission's back in the way it's supposed to be, because a lot of these pieces will fall out. The one shift fork here will come out for sure, and this gear, there's really nothing holding it on. There's two sides. You notice there's one that's concave and the other is flat. Concave side goes in, and make sure it goes down all the way onto this shaft. You see how it's kind of wobbly, and there it is in all the way. Okay, make sure everything's rolling good, and you can turn your shift fork. If you can't turn the shifter, then you got something to look at before you put it together. All right, you can sit here and cycle through all 6 gears. Not really a requirement. As long as it's turning, you're good. Okay, crank's in, right side anyways. Transmission's all lined up. Everything's turning smoothly like it's supposed to. We just put a little bit of oil on all the bearing surfaces here and any of the actuators, just to make it slide in a little easier. If you notice there, I put a very light coat of RTV silicone gasket maker around the outside between the cases. Just, you don't want any leaks. They recommend, I believe it's Yamaha gasket or something. It's all the same. Anyways, to slide her on, just line everything up gently, and basically you're just going to wiggle it and make sure everything is lining up. You don't want to put it on crooked. Make sure your connecting rod's where it's supposed to be. And it's a bit of a pain at first. There you go. You feel it'll go an inch at a time as things line up where they're supposed to. Sometimes shaking it'll go. What you don't want to do is put bolts in and start reefing on it until you're sure that everything is lined up and where it's supposed to be.
Make sure you don't hit your hand.
Okay, stop. Okay, case is all together. Took a little bit of gentle persuasion with my trusty hammer here, but it's literally, you don't want to beat on it hard, just lightly tap. What I did was I went around the outside here and just, you can hear how hard it was, and literally just pushed the crank in. It was what was holding it. Tapped it a few times at the back if it got uneven. Wasn't anything too crazy. Nothing I wasn't expecting anyways. Make sure your connecting rod's not getting pinched, and all your gears and what are lined up is the big one. Just take your time, and it'll go together just fine. In my case, when you get an engine in a box, you always expect you're going to be missing bolts, and so far I've got this half stripped old one here. That one I'm sure is not even the right one because I can barely get a socket on it. And this guy. And I just put those in place for now while I sort out my bag of oddball stuff to find the actual bolts. And that's just to hold the case together. So that the forma gasket that I put in here, a very, very light coating of forma gasket. And that's just sealing things up for me right now. And I'm going to go ahead, sort through my bolts and see if I can't find all my proper case bolts, and put the seals in here on the ends of the crank. Alright, got the right side seal put back in. There's a steel collar that goes on the inside between the crankshaft and the seal. That slid right into place. Put the bracket back in, tighten it up, make sure you torque all that stuff. The kit came with all the seals, including the all the transmission ones. These weren't faulty, but I'm going to go ahead and change them out in a little bit here. Next thing, as far as the crankshaft goes, is the main drive gear. Okay, it just goes over the crank. You got to remember the little keyway here that goes in the slot. If you forget that, you're just going to spin your wheels. Then of course the washer and the nut, and there's a torque. I got it wrote down here. I'll find it shortly. Alright, got the nut on. It's all torqued up. I just went by and did a quick inspection of everything. Got the seal replaced here. Make sure the kicker's in all the way. All the springs are lined up here and in there as well. If you look down in there, I don't know if it'll show, there's a little bracket that has to be there. Anyway, just making sure everything's in place. The shifter mechanism is constantly coming loose because if you lay it down, it pushes here and it'll pop out. So just make sure that's flush. You'll know it's working because you can sit here and cycle through the gears. If it's not going up and down, you're not lined up here on this end. So just make sure you're in all the way before you go too far. Went and replaced the water pump seal here on the case. It came in the kit. There's a little washer, or a spacer I guess it is, before you put your impeller back on. And that just spins on. Harder to do with one hand when you're filming. And 10mm nut, and I'll go ahead and torque that down. Got the new gasket, surface is all cleaned up. I got new gaskets for here. I'm going to go ahead and put the side case on and put the water pump gasket and cover on, and I'll be back in a sec. Alright, putting the clutch together. Again, replace the seal, got the side cover on, all torqued down. Thin washer first, goes all the way down. Your spacer goes on. Okay. Make sure your gears are going to be a little bit weird because you're lining up the idler gear for the kicker and the main drive gear at the same time. Okay, it may feel like it's going in, but then you have to kind of wiggle things. You're turning over the engine and it'll pop down. When it pops down, you're turning the crank and the kicker at the same time. You'll know it's in all the way. Then you have a thick washer that goes in. Thunderstorm in here.
No kidding. Sorry about that.
Alright, clutch is all assembled, cover's back on, everything's all torqued up on this side. We're going to go back to the other side now, put the crank seal on, and look at putting the electronics back in. I already replaced the rear seal on the drive sprocket. This seal here we replaced earlier. It's good. You can see here a lot of my screws were just gangled. This is again what happens when you get an engine in a box. There was a bag of screws and some of them are missing and some of them are chewed up. So I'm going to go ahead and get new bolts here. Hopefully I can get the right ones and I don't have to jerk around, but you never know. I'm still missing a couple. This one up here, that guy down there, and I'm pretty sure this one and that guy are not the right ones as well. So I'm gonna head to the hardware store, get me some new bolts, and you know, normal thing. Anyway, I'll update you here in a bit. Alright, electronics are in. Just be advised, there is some timing on this. If you move the stator back and forth, you loosen both nuts on either end. There is a timing mark there on the flywheel itself. Top dead center is right about there. Anyways, refer to your manual if you're going to get into that. Again, I'm far from needing to adjust that yet. We'll still got to do the entire top end. Bottom end's done, other than again where I got to replace these bolts. I haven't gone to the hardware store yet because, well, I'm lazy.